coming home to thee. Wash me, cleanse me in thy blood that flows on Calvary. Let's get a bit of tempo. Thou coming weak and veil, thou do where strength are show, thou dost my vileness, fullness cleanse, till spotless all and pure. I am coming, Lord, coming now to thee. Wash me, cleanse me in thy blood that flowed on Calvary. Jesus calls me on to perfect faith and love, to perfect hope and peace and trust, for than heaven above. I am coming, Lord, coming home to thee. Wash me, cleanse me in thy blood that flowed from Calvary. All hail atoning blood, all hail redeeming grace, all hail the gift of Christ our Lord, our strength and righteousness. I am coming, Lord, coming home to thee. Wash me, cleanse me in thy blood that flows. Worthy, worthy is thy Lamb. Worthy, worthy is thy Lamb too. Worthy, worthy is thy Lamb. Worthy, worthy is thy Lamb. Worthy, worthy is thy Lamb that was slain. Glory, hallelujah. Praise him, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah, to the Lamb. Savior, let thy kingdom come. Now the power of sin consume. Bring thy blessed millennium, Holy Lamb. Glory, hallelujah. Praise him, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. To thy Lamb. Thus may we each moment feel, love him, serve him, praise him still, till we all on Zion's hill see the Lamb. Glory, hallelujah. Praise him, hallelujah. Glory.
Father, we thank you, dear Lord. We thank you, Lord, for your love to us. We thank you for your mercy. We thank you for your grace. We thank you for the blessing that you have bestowed in us. Father, as we're about to hear your word, we pray that you open our heart, that as your word entered our heart, let it dwell in our heart, let it germinate, let it be the anchor of our life every day, that as we live, we remember thy law and the rules and the ways and your will. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
I greet you all in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, amen. Amen. It is good to be in the house of the Lord. Amen. It is good because God meets you at the point of your need. During the Sabbath school, someone was blessed by the Sabbath school because God was meeting you at the point of your need. During the lesson study, someone during the week probably had a question, but because you came to the Sabbath, Jesus met you at the point of your need and answered that prayer that you had or that question that you had. During the week, someone was longing for music, and we are here today worshiping God. Jesus is meeting you at the point of your need. And today, at this hour, someone is longing for that word of God and saying, Jesus, God bless me. During the week, it has been tough. During the week, it has been good. But I am here today to say you are my sustainer, Lord Jesus Christ. To say I am praising you, Lord Jesus Christ, for all that you've done for us. So right now, Jesus wants to meet you at the point of your need and listen to the sermon. And hopefully, throughout the day, someone will be blessed. And all of us will go out and say, Jesus has met me at my point of my need. So tata amaculo etu sivulo hymn number 24, and let's sing it with vigor. You know, we are here to worship God. We are here to praise him. We are here to say, Lord, we have been through so much during the week. We are praising you. We shall stand up and sing. Thanks.
Number 24, let's all rise. It's Kia. I need thee every alto. I need thee every hour. Most gracious Lord, no tender voice like thine can peace afford. Come, church. I need thee, oh, I need thee. Yes, oh, I need thee. Oh, bless me now, my Savior. I come to thee. Number 2. I need thee every hour. Stay thou nearby. Temptations lose their power when thou art thou. I need thee, oh, I need every hour. I need thee, oh, bless me now, my Savior. I come to thee. Number 3. I need thee every hour in joy or pain. Come quickly and abide. Oh, life in. I don't know about you. I need thee, oh, I need thee. Every hour I need thee. Oh, bless me now, my Savior. Savior, I come to thee. The last one. I need thee every hour. Most holy one, oh, make me thy indeed, thy blessed Son. I need thee, oh, I need thee. Every hour I need thee. Oh, bless me now, my Savior. One more time. I come to thee. Oh, I need thee. Oh, I need thee. Every hour I need thee. Oh, bless me now, my Savior. I come to thee. Amen.
I would like the church to sit. I would like to greet the Church of God in the most wonderful name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Our rock, our fortress, and our deliverer. Let's read from Psalm 116, verse 12, from verse 12. Psalm 116, from verse 12. What shall I render to the Lord for all his benefits to me? I will lift up the cup of salvation and call on the name of the Lord. I will pay my vows to the Lord in the presence of all his people. May God bless the reading of his word in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Amen. You know, these days when I pray, I am impressed. You know, as I go down on my knees, I have my own petitions in mind. And as I start praying, I just get stuck on praising God and thanking him. You know, at some stage I was telling God that there are things I've been praying for many years that have not come to fruition, Lord. There are things that I'm trusting you for, but have not come through. And you know what? In all those things, I am moved to thank God for one reason. It's because I know who I trust. I know that the Bible says about him, for he is faithful, he who has promised. So our God is faithful, no matter what. Even if whatever we ask for does not come in our lifetime, our God remains faithful. So I'm going to urge you this morning that let's go down on our knees with hearts full of thanksgiving, no matter what. Our God is faithful, so says the Bible. May God bless us. Amen. I'm going to ask us to kneel before the offering is collected. Father God, we come before you. We want to thank you. We want to praise you. Dear Lord, this morning we acknowledge that there is no God like you. You are the Holy One of Israel. You are our God. You are our rock, our fortress, and our deliverer. Our forefathers trusted in you, Father God. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Father God, this morning also we declare that we trust in you. We will trust in you, Father God, no matter what. Because, Father God, we know whom we're believing in. We trust you, Father God. Whatever the circumstances are, we remain trusting you, Father God. For you are a faithful God. You are a God who comes through. No matter how we think of you, but you do come through. You are faithful. Thank you, Father God, for all the prayers that you have answered. And we want to thank you, Father God, even for those that have not been answered yet. Even for those that you, in your own wisdom, you have decided to withhold from us. Thank you, Father God. We glorify your holy name. We thank you, Father God, because your purpose for our lives is to have us in your kingdom. Whatever it is that we are asking for, and we are not aware that it's going to be a hindrance in our lives to get to heaven, we want to glorify you for withholding all those blessings. We thank you, Father God, this morning, for you are a God. You are worthy to be praised. You are higher than anything. You are God. We trust you, our rock, our fortress, and our deliverer. We trust you, for our forefathers trusted in you, and they were delivered. We trust you, Father God, because we believe that even now, ourselves, we will be delivered. For we pray a faithful God, a God who is never lacking. We thank you, Father God. We ask you to lead us and our children in the way you want us to go. Please, Father God, bless us now as we pour our hearts to you in the form of monies to say thank you. Father God, even those of us who don't feel like thanking you through money, in Jesus' name we pray, Father God, that you may touch us, that you may help us to realize that we need to offer to you thanksgiving offerings to you. For you are a God who is faithful. Whatever it is that you are doing, you have given us the ability to do so, and you have blessed the work of our hands. Help us, Father God. Bless us with generosity, so that even the children that we are raising, Father God, they may be moved, they may learn what we are doing and not what we are saying. In Jesus' mighty name we pray and we thank you. Amen.
Okay, let's do number 136. Number 136. Where he may lead me, I will go, for I have learned to trust him so, and I remember 'twas for me that he was slain on Calvary. Jesus shall lead me night and day, and Jesus shall lead me all the way. He is the true best friend to me, for I remember Calvary. Oh, I delight in his command. Love all my days, oh, now for him. Gia pambing, ge ngesibindi uKristu seduze kwami ngithemba uJesu ngombona isihloko seCalvary yenake uJesu ngumholi wami wongihola yokindlela One more time. Vari yenage o Jesu ngumholi wami wongihola yokindlela kumhlobo wami impela ngikhumbula eCalvary.
I'd like to greet the church in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. Happy Sabbath, church. Can we please open our Bibles to Philippians 4, verses 6. So it's a simple verse that we have all heard time and time again. It says, be careful of nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. Amen? So we know we're supposed to come to God and pray to Him and ask for whatever from Him. Logically be applied to say, to any situation in which you must entreat someone in power for help or a favor. So, God, we know, is the ultimate power, and that's where we are coming with this situation. But then for me, this supplication also came up with but we use this word ever so often in prayer situations. But if you are an employer, or rather, sorry, if you are an employee, you somehow have to go and humbly plead to your employers for whatever it is that you are looking for, be it a raise, be it a leave. Just to go and leave, to go to VBS, you need to go and humbly ask in prayer, or rather, like in prayer to God, but to the employer in that situation. So I wanted to find out now, how do we do this supplication that we are supposed to do? There's ways of praying. We can start with adoration. Now, this is directed to God. I don't say we must go and adore our bosses, but sometimes it works if you want what you want. You know, you say, nice tie today, and then they feel puffed up, and then they can give you whatever it is that you want. But from God, we go and we praise God. Adoration, we praise God. Mamudisa was just saying now, which she feels like praying. When she feels like praying, she's got all the things that she wants to say. She gets stuck at this praising. Praising God really does something to you as well. So that's one step we can start with. Contrition. Ask for God's forgiveness. Ask for God's forgiveness. Ask for God's forgiveness. That's as much as I can go for it. We know what it is that we want to ask forgiveness for. Sometimes Usatane will blind us and make us think that we have nothing to ask for forgiveness for. It's right. We are perfect. We didn't do anything that is visibly wrong. Your thoughts, the things that you just bypass, things that you don't take cognition of. Then there's petition. Now you can ask for your favor, whatever it is that you are asking for. And then you have thanksgiving, showing God gratitude. Thank you, Jesus. Siyabonga smagate. Siyabonga Baba. So I'm going to ask that we all take a knee and we have 3 minutes of silent prayer where you exercise these things to God. Ask adoration, contrition, petition, and thanksgiving. And I will close with a prayer. Amen. You can kneel.
Ngesikhathi somkhuleko sithobenhliziyo sisondela kuJesu umhlobo wethu sizasikholwa kuye osihlangu sethu sithokozo kathele yeka ubunandi.
Father in heaven, we thank you, Lord, for being a good God to us. We thank you for hearing our prayer this morning. We thank you, Father, for answering our prayer. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I've just been told there's no children's story today. Sorry. Mara next week, ne? Yes. Let's move along. I'd like to introduce the panel in front. The prayer was by Uthandi Viriri. The offertory reading was by Omam Mudise. And our preacher is Obab Chibubuti. And I'm Sbongile Ngobeni. We shall take... Amen. Sorry, I didn't give you a chance. We shall take hymn number 67 and stand up and sing it with vigor and might before the preacher sends the message to us. Thank you.
Okay, let's all stand. Come with the Lord alive. Abesa benkosito. Abesa benkosi habatandubuso. Dumi sange gomemnandi dumi. Hloniphu bukhosi hloniphu bukhosi omasiye qhubekele Zion ngobo buhle beZion isiqhubekela
nikaNkulunkulu ngeke bahlabele haba ngehloniphe kodwa bantwana ithi labo kodwa bantwana benkosi bayo hlabelela bayo hlabelela omasiye Zion ngobuhle beZion isiqhubekela phezulu emzini kaNkulunkulu intaba yeZion ithe lokumnandi singabafika ezulwini sinyatheli golide sinyatheli golide omasiye qhubekele Zion ngobuhle beZion isiqhubekela phezulu emzini kaNkulunkulu. Number 4, zandiswe ingoma inyembe. It's incorrectly parked. If you can move your car, would gladly appreciate it. It's a white Almera. Registration is XGT 002 GP. XGT 002. Amen.
I greet the saints in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. It's always great and good to be here in the house of the Lord. I feel blessed and also to thank the Lord for these days that He have made, the day that we rest upon Him, the day that we forget about all the challenges that we face during the week, the day that we come here to worship Him as the only God who created heaven and earth. We know that our God is a God of love. As we were singing an opening song, when we were saying that, I need you every hour. And I say that I need you, God, in my life every hour. I believe that the same song that all of us are singing, that we need God every time, every hour, every minute, and every second of our life. That is God that we are saving. And today, we're going to share a message about our journey to heaven. And I will say to you, the beloved remnant of God, that our God is with us. And our God is with us throughout this journey. I mean, as we journey to heaven, we know that God has been a loving God. I would really want us to open our Bible as we get the words of hope. Let's open our Bibles in the book of John chapter 3, a most favorable verse of mine. John chapter 3, verse 16. It says, for God so loved the world, that He gave His only begotten Son. Underline, His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And also underline everlasting life. This is one verse that tells us about God whom we served, the God of love. And if we open our Bible again in the book of 1 John, as we go towards the end of the Bible, 1 John chapter 4, and we'll open verse 7 to 8. It says, "Beloved, let us love one another. For love is of God. And everyone that loveth is born of God. And knoweth God. But he that loveth not, knows not God. For God is love." I mean, God is love. We saw it as we read John chapter 3, verse 16. It tells us, "For God so loved the world." And here we're hearing that God is love. And the manifestation of God's love was a miracle to us, where mercy of forgiveness of the fallen being like us, that God have to bring that one gift that he have in heaven, which was the only begotten Son, that we too can be reunited and called heir of heaven again. And that is the God that we need. So as from those words, we can say that God's love for man is wonderful. I mean, as we look around, we look at nature, and Revelation, all these testify God's love. I mean, if you can't testify God's love by looking around you, looking around nature, a few weeks ago, we were at the Blade Canyon, and you can see nature on its own, and that manifests God's love through just looking at nature on its own. And the sun shines as we see the bright light outside. When it rains, all that glazing, the freshness of the earth. When we see the hills, we see the sea, we see the plains. It all speaks about us, the Creator's love. And that's what we say, that God is love. And one thing that we need to know is that it is God who supplies the daily needs of all his creature. If there be any creature that says, "I don't get supplied by God," I don't know. But that comes to us as a creature of God too here. It is God who supplies all our needs daily. That's why we sing to say, "I need you every hour. I need you every second." Because it is only God who sustains us. We cannot be self-sustainable. It's only when we put our faith to God, that's when we will be sustained by God. God made man perfectly and holy and happy. The original being that was created, Adam, was so holy and was happy. When we see all unhappiness around us, that is not the plan of God. That is not what God have created us. He created even a fair earth, that as you can say it. All this, when it comes from the hands of God, all was beautiful. When it comes from the hand of God, all was beautiful. And all that, we didn't see any bleat of decay or a shadow of curse from it. But it was the transgression of God's law, the law of love, that have brought all the woes and death for us. And maybe just to go deeper into that, how did we transgress the law of God? Because transgression of the law of God, it was going with disobedience to the will of God and the principle of the law of love of God. Maybe if you ask yourself the law of the love of God, you need to ask. When we read in the book of Mark, it will say that when Jesus was talking about the most principal law, is about love. Love thy God with all your heart, and with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. And that on its own, it encompasses our love to God. And then it goes, love thy neighbor as you love yourself. That is the law of God of love, but it encompasses the will of us to God. But then let's go to the disobedience to God as the self-sustainer. Here we see Adam looking at an Eve, where the devil come and planted a seed of doubt from whether God is still the God that they can trust him. And on that, they started to believe that surely if we eat, we will become better than what God has created us. And that deception, we see it even today, where we find as African, maybe going back to history, going back first to say, the devil says to Adam and Eve, you should not surely die. God told them the day they will eat, they will die. And they say, you won't die. We find ourselves today, or most African traditionally, that the African believe on worshiping the ancestor or the dead. And where is that belief coming from? Because we believe that when one dies, you don't die. You go to somewhere more comfortable where you get promoted into a god. And then those that are remain call for you for sustenance. While we just read that only God sustains us. And we call them ancestor. Because it is still following the vein of deception of the devil that says that you will not surely die. And that's why we believe that when the ancestors die, they become gods. And then you get everything from them. That is an African belief. And we use different medium to say, but let me tell you today, all those who believe in ancestral, they believe in other gods. And it's still a disobedience to God, as happened between Adam and Eve. The Europeans, they believe on the sun god and all planets and that are Jupiters and all that. Or as the sun comes back, they will be worshiping, oh, sun, you come back again. And you give us sustenance. They believe the sun will give them everything. You go to the east, you find that they have all graven images. You go to the east today, all graven images, they call it gods of what, gods of what, gods of everything. But all take us back to the enormity of sin. And the deception and how deep the deception of the devil have gone. Even today, some are still being deceived and not seeing it. That when devil say you can have other God than the one that created heaven and earth. Because he already, the reason why he was brought down is because he has already disobeyed and he was challenging God as the only mighty God. I mean, even among the suffering as a result of sin, God's love is still being revealed to us. The world, thou fallen, is not all sorrow and misery. In nature itself, a message of hope and comfort, as I've already said. There are flowers upon the tree, and thorns are covered with roses. So that which you think might be the most painful thing is still covered with something smelling good, like a roses. I mean, in describing his mission, Jesus, now let's move. While describing his mission, Jesus is saying, the Lord has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captive, and recovering of sight to the blind, and to set at liberty them that are bruised. And that was his work. I mean, he went on doing good and healing in all that were oppressed by the devil. I mean, there were whole villages that he went, and we find no mourning of sickness in any houses, for he have passed through them and healed their sick. And that gave evidence of that he is a divine anointing. I mean, when we know that love, mercy, and compassion, it revealed the very act of his life. I mean, when we look at the life of Jesus, every element of his act revealed love. Every element of his act revealed mercy. Every element of his act revealed compassion. The Bible said, and he had compassion on them. He fed them. He had compassion on them. That is Jesus that we're talking about. And his heart went out in tender sympathy to the children of men, which is us. I mean, he took man's nature that he might reach man's needs, which is us. And the poorest and the harmless were not afraid to approach him, even little children. How we are today, do the poorest and the harmless able to approach us? Or we are this big being that no one can approach us because we feel we are so good or so precious? And that is not what we hear from Jesus. He tells us that Jesus, he did not suppress one word of the truth. I mean, he said the truth as it's supposed to be said. But the lesson to us comes. But he uttered it always with love. Truth is truth, But it needs to be uttered with love. He exercised greatest tact. That's Jesus. And thoughtfulness. When we talk to others without thinking, that is not reflecting Jesus. When Jesus talks, he look thoughtful about what he is talking and how it will impact the next person. I mean, here we say that kind attention in his engagement with people. He had that kind attention when he engaged with others. I mean, he was never rude, never needless spoke of a severe word, never gave needless pain to a sensitive soul. When we find ourselves, when the soul is down, that's when we come and kick it while it's on the ground, gaining advantage. Kicking it while it's on the ground. That is not reflecting Jesus. He did not censure human weakness. He spoke the truth, but always in love. He denounced hypocrisy. The hypocrites. You know, the hypocrites that they were Pharisees and all those. That in the front of the eyes of people, they want to be looked, to be seen as better and holier than thou. But while their hearts were filthy with wrongdoing and sinful sinners, that's what Jesus, he denounces that. The unbelief and iniquity. But with tears, his voice, as he uttered the scattering for rebuke. When he rebuked, you can see that his voice was uttered with, it was to redeem that Jesus lived and suffer and die to redeem us. I mean, there was no one other than the Son of God who could accomplish our redemption. For only he was the one who is in the bosom of the Father who can declare redemption to those that were bound by the chains of the devil. But as a result, after we have seen the love of God, one thing important, saints, is that sinner need of Christ. As sinner, we need the Lord, Sinner need Christ. As men, we were originally endowed with the noble power, a well-balanced mind, A noble power as human being, and our mind was well-balanced. We were perfect in our being and in harmony with God. And our thoughts were pure. Our aims were holy. That's why we hear David praying to say, create me a new thought, a pure thought, O Lord. Because he knew that our thoughts were pure. Not the thought of sinfulness that we have today. I mean, but through disobedience, our power were perverted. Selfishness took the place of love. Selfishness. It took the place of love in our heart. When it became about me. When it became jealousy. When it became pride. When it became all sorts of human manifestation of selfishness that we see in us, that put a veil that we cannot see the greatness of God. That we think when we are pride, that's when you become the greatest. And forgotten that it's not about yourself. There is God that we need to bring praises to. Whether people around you praise you, that give you nothing. Being proud to be seen as the greatest give you nothing. Our nature becomes so weakened through transgression that it is impossible for us, in our own strength, to resist the power of evil creation. Through our own power, we cannot resist evil. That's why I say, sinner, you need Christ. Amen. Because your own power is nothing when compared to the power of the devil. But through Christ, through communion with Christ, the devil will flee. Because he will be seeing he's fighting the giant. I mean, we're made captive by Satan. We'll have remained forever had not been God's special intervention. I mean, Jesus said, except a man be born from above, unless he shall receive a new heart, a new desire, new purpose, a new motive, leading to a new life, he cannot see the kingdom of heaven. John chapter 3, verse 3. I mean, we need now new heart, a new desire. What are our desires today, brethren? Our desires are those desires that are new or are desires that are driven by the achievement of this world. Our purpose and what motivates us to lead us to this new life. These are the things that we need to know. When a man has found Jesus, there is a next step that he needs to do. When we found Jesus, how shall a man be just with God? That's the question that we're asking. How shall a man be just with God? How shall the sinner be made righteousness? It is only through Christ that we can be brought into harmony with God, with holiness. But how are we to come to Christ? How are we to come to Christ? We need to repent. Sinner need Christ. Sinner need to repent. Many are asking same question as the multitude in the day of the Pentecost, when they were convicted of their sin and they cried, what shall we do? The first word of Peter was repent. When you are convicted of a sin, the Spirit will quicken you to say, what shall I do, Lord? And the voice will come, repent. I mean, repentance, when you look at it, it includes sorrow for sin and turning away from it. We cannot leave sin unless we see its sinfulness. That is the biggest challenge we have, brethren. That we struggle to leave our sins because we don't see its sinfulness. Because we see that is sin after somebody has sinned, sin that we are sinning. Until we turn away from in our heart, there will be no real change in our life. And the main thing is that when sin is sin, we need to see its sinfulness from our heart ourselves. There are many who fail to understand the true nature of repentance. Multitudes sorrow that they have sinned, even make an outward reformation because they fear that their wrongdoing will bring suffering upon them. But this is not the repentance in the sense of the Bible. I mean, we need to repent not because we are fearing of the consequences, but because we understand and the sinfulness of sin. That's where we will be able to repent. I mean, we're talk of they lamented the suffering rather than the sin. I mean, such as the grief of Esau when he saw that the birthright is lost forever, and he lamented. I mean, Balaam was terrified by the angel standing on his path with the sword drawn and acknowledged his guilt. Lest we know that he was going to lose life, but there was no genuine repentance on him, no convention of purpose or no hatred of the evil. I mean, we look at Judas. After betraying the Lord, he exclaimed, I have sinned that I have betrayed the innocent blood. confession were forced from his guilty through that he was half of the sense of the condemnation that was going to have. And the consequence that were the result filled him with terror. But there was no deep, heartbreaking grief in his soul. And he betrayed the spotless Son of God and denied the Holy One of Israel. I mean, we look back again, Pharaoh. When suffering under the judgment of God, he acknowledged his sin, ordered to escape from the punishment. But he returned to his defiance of heaven after soon the plague has stayed away. We know that Pharaoh, he said, now I won't do it. Afterwards, he say no. Even after they have lost all their first sons, he even pursued her to follow the Israelites. That you can see that irrespective of all the things that he said that now I've repented, he just wanted all the consequence to pass. And that is what we challenge with us today. I mean, but the prayer of David after his fall illustrates the nature of the true sorrow of sin. His repentance was sincere and deep. That is David. There was no effort to palliate his great, no deep desire to escape the judgment that was threatening for him. David saw the enormity of his transgression and the defilement of his soul from what he had done. Unless we see the defilement of our soul or our body from what we have done, we will never see sin as sinfulness. And we will want to continue to do it when we believe that no one else sees us. Let me tell you something, brethren. The God that we serve, even if a minor commits sin 3 kilometers down in the belly of the earth, he still knows it. So how about you just sitting under the roof of the house thinking you are hidden? The God we serve, you cannot hide sin from him. And that's why today, don't be fooled by the devil and his defilement. The devil make you feel that I am covered. We are not covered. I mean, the poor publican who prayed, God, be merciful with me, sinner. I mean, regarded himself as the wicked man. First of all, we need to regard ourselves as a wicked man so that we know that as wicked, we need Christ. But if we don't see ourselves as wicked and want to be hypocrites like the Pharisees, in front of people look good, we won't see a need for Christ. We will see a need for an outwards change, outward appearance of looking good. And thou, the other, looked at that man as wicked. Of course, they see he's a wicked man. But the most important, he himself looked at himself as wicked. And he saw the need for repentance and the need for Christ. I mean, Christ is ready to set us free from sin, brethren. But he does not force the will, our will. He does not force it. If by persistent transgression, the will itself is wholly bent on evil thing. And we don't need to desire to be set free. I mean, there's nothing that God will do when we reject his love. I've already said, God is love. For he has only given us the only begotten Son, so that our sin, the begotten Son can bear our sin. And then we need to give away and turn away from our sin, that we become also communed with him. He that covers his sin shall not prosper, but whosoever confess and forsake, then shall have mercy. Proverbs chapter 28, verse 13. So if we cover our sins and not confess them, we won't have the mercy of God. I mean, the condition of obtaining mercy of God is very simple. It's just and reasonable. The Lord does not require us to do grievous things in order for us to have forgiveness of sin. I mean, the Bible tells us that he that confess and forsake, he will have mercy. I mean, confess your fault confess fault one to another and pray for another that you may be healed. Confess your sins to God first, and only He can forgive you. And we confess our fault to one another. When we have faulted one another, we confess our fault to one another. But our sins, we confess to the God. Because if you have offensed your friend or neighbor, you are to acknowledge you are wrong. Because it is the duty of that other person to freely forgive you. But you know that if you seek forgiveness in God, God will forgive you. Confession is not to be acceptable to God without sincere repentance and reformation. There must be decided change in life. Everything offensive, God must be put away to God. And this results to a genuine sorrow of our sin, and that's why we have to confess. I wanted to share with you, we know Adam and Eve, after they have sinned, we know Adam first, his reply, laying guilty partly to God and upon the companion, which was Eve, and say, the woman whom thou gavest me, she gave me the tree and I did eat. From that, there was no acknowledgement of sin from Adam. It's not, I am still pure. It's this one. Then we go to the women and she blamed the serpent. The serpent killed me and I did eat. Why did you make this serpent, Lord? Why you suffer him to come to Eden? And this is how we find ourselves. When we have sinned, instead we look of the reason that might have caused us to sin, other than say, I am a sinner and Lord forgive me. God's promise is that you shall seek me and you find me. When you shall search for me with all your heart, in Jeremiah. When we seek God, we will find God. If we don't find God, it's because we're not seeking him. Because those who seek, findeth God. Because God is there for us to seek and find him. The warfare against self is the greatest battle that was ever fought. Against self. Yielding of self, surrendering all to the will of God, requires a struggle. For us to yield self, it requires so that we surrender to God. It requires a struggle. But the soul might be submitted to God before it can be renewed to holiness. There are those who prefer to serve God while they rely upon their own effort to obey God's law. To form right character and secure salvation, such religion worth nothing. You cannot do that. Not with your own understanding. Jesus, he teaches us when he said, abide in me and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruits on itself, except it abide in the vine. No more can you except you abide in me. Without me, you can do nothing. So that means like a branch. We cannot be fruitful. No branch that I've ever seen that bear fruits unless they are connected to the main stem and the roots of the tree. And that is also to us that we cannot bear any fruits. The fruits of love. The fruits, all the fruits of love, we cannot bear them unless we are connected to the vine, which is Jesus. We have no power to resist temptation or to grow in grace and holiness unless we connect to the vine. Abiding in him will make us flourish and drawing our life closer to him. And we will not wither. Any branch that is cut from the vine, it withered. And it will be fruitless. And we will be a tree that's like tree planted in the waters of the rivers. But I need to look at how do we need to give our life in work and life for Jesus. God is the source of life and is the source of light and is the source of joy in the universe. Like rays of light from the sun, like streams of water flowing from the spring, blessing flow out of him to all his creature. blessing. You know, the rays get their light from the sun. And the springs, the water flowing from the spring. But we get our blessing from God himself. And whenever life of God is in the heart of man, it will flow out to other in love and blessing. Maybe you didn't get this point well. Whenever the life of God is in the heart of man, when the life of God is in our heart, let me say that, it will flow into others in love and blessing. So when we are blessed, we have love of God in us that need to be manifested where others can see it. Others should see love. Others should see blessings through us. Because then in our heart there is the love of God. Let me say that. When the love of Christ is enshrined in the heart, like sweet fragrance, it cannot be hidden. I mean, you put a sweet fragrance here, everyone will hear it as you pass. So that's when your life is enriched with the life of Christ in you. It cannot be hidden. I mean, its holy influence will be felt by all whom you come in contact with. So anybody that you come in contact with will feel the freshness and the fragrance of the holiness that you have. And that's how we are supposed to be. I mean, the only way to grow in grace and to be objectively is doing the work which Christ has instructed us upon to engage, and to the extent of our ability. So we all have different ability to do the work that has been given to us. In helping and blessing those who need the help we can give them. As we are here, we are helpful to others by giving them blessing and love. And strength, if you don't know, comes by exercise. Activity is the very condition of life. You will never get strength unless you exercise. So us exercising the love out there, that's when we get strength in our life. Those who endeavor to maintain Christianity life by passively accepting the blessing that come through by means of grace are doing nothing for Christ, are simply trying to live by eating without waking. Do you hear that? For us that are just sitting doing nothing, it's like somebody who expecting to sit and just get all the blessing and eat without waking. And in the spiritual as the natural world, always the result is degeneration and decay when we sit doing nothing. A man who refuses to exercise his limb will soon lose all the power to use it. So we need to exercise love in us by manifesting love through others. Or else the love that we talk about, it won't be a practical love. That we saw God so love the world and bring his only begotten son. That was practical. I mean, Church of Christ is God appointment agents of salvation of men. The Kempton Park Central is an agent appointed by God for the salvation of men. So we are not just here to come and sit. We should know that we are the agent of God for the salvation of men. Therefore, go ye therefore. And we need to carry the gospel out to the world. And the obligation rests upon us, Christians, everyone to the extent of his talent and opportunity. That we have a commission that we need to do. So we all have different talent. So you cannot say that I cannot preach. But you have different talent to manifest love of God to others. And that on its own, you are fulfilling your commission that have been sent to you. Go you therefore. Because when others look the presence of the Lord in you, they will want to follow you. Love of Christ revealing us, make us debtors to all who knows him not. The love of Christ in us, we are debtors to everyone that know the Lord not out there. And we have to repay by going out there and ensure that everyone knows about God. The privilege of us in prayer. Through nature and revelation, through his providence that he always do to us every day. By the influence of his Spirit, we know that God always speaks to us. He speaks to us through natures. He speaks to us through his providence that he gave us blessing every day. It's a message that he's giving to us. And through the influence of the Holy Spirit. But these are not enough. We need also to pour our heart to him. How do we pour our heart to God? In order to have spiritual life and energy, we must have actual intercourse with our Heavenly Father. In order to commune with God, we must have something to say to him concerning our actual life. We need to say something to God concerning our actual life. But again, prayer is the opening of our heart to God as to a friend. I believe all of us have friend, or you have ever had a friend in your life if you don't have one now. And you know that when you have friend, you open and pour to the friend. And here it says that God, as your friend, when you close your eyes to talk to him, you pour again about your actual life to him. And what are the supplications that you want to him? The petition that you want from him. One of the things that we should pray in family cycle. We should pray as a church. Above all, we must not neglect secret prayer. What is secret prayer? For this is the life of the soul. It is impossible for the soul to flourish while prayer is neglected. We cannot flourish in our soul without prayer. Family or public prayer alone is not sufficient. We need sacred prayer, which is the prayer between us and God. And the sacred prayer is to be heard only by the prayer hearing God. Don't pray your secret prayer so that your next neighbor to hear it, because it's about you and God. Even any curious ears should not hear your petition to God, because that's when you pour your heart to God. And we should pray as a family, and we should pray as a church, we should pray as community. But don't forget the secret prayer. There are those who say, no, I don't pray. We have already prayed as a family. And then they left and go to work. You still need to have to pour a prayer to God, which is about you. And those that you want to pray for, the prayer of intercession for others. But which is you pouring it to God. When we journey to God, to heaven, we know that there are so many steps that we need to go through for us to find ourselves as victors in this journey. We know that the devil has got a lot of things that he's doing to ensure that not all of us, but some of us might not make it in this journey. But that's why here today we're saying that first, let's remind you that God is love. He has already shown his love by bringing his only begotten Son to come and die for us. And as he has died for us, he is opening up his arms to say that if you are a sinner, here I am, I'm Christ, come to me, those who are heavily laden. And how do we come to God? That's why we say, let's repent and confess our sin. Once we start walking with the Lord, let's ensure that we worked for the Lord. Because now we became agent of the Lord, also to take out the gospel to others who haven't had the opportunity that we have got for knowing about the Lord. That is the Christian journey. As Christians, we are set as the light bearer on the way to heaven. So how do you become a light bearer? That means you need to be living the life that shows you that everyone should reflect on light. For those who might have been on an area where there's no too much electricity, when you have a light, everyone who's far away can see that there is light there. And in most cases, people want to come closer to the light because they believe that that's where you find to be saved. We are to reflect to the world the light shining upon us from Christ. when light hits a mirror, it reflects on the other side. Then when we got the light from God, it need to hit our heart and reflect so that other can see us. That is the light. But when the light come and cannot reflect, that means our heart is not yet the mirror reflecting Christ. That's why it cannot reflect the light to others. Our life, our character, should be such that through us, others will get a right conception of Christ and his service. Others should get the conception of Christ and his service through us. And that's the message that God is talking to us as the beloved remnant of God today. Amen, church.
We thank God for the message that he has given us today, that he loves us. And as he loves us, we shall give love to everyone. We shall open our hymns to number 40 and sing it with might. We shall stand.
Okay, let's do it in Zulu. Hey. The church wants Zulu. Let's sing it in Zulu. Ngasilandela inkosi ngempela to. Ngasilandela inkosi ngempela uzokhanya endleleni yethu simlalela uKristu sibe naye lapha uma simuzwa simhloni sonke dlale lani akukho okunye okuthabisi Nkosi umlingela lelwe. Number 2, akukuthunzana akukho yezana kuxoshwa ukumomotheka asike sabeke asingebukule umasimuzwa simhlonipha lalelani akukho okunye okuthabisi Nkosi umlingela lelwe akukho bunzima akukho sekithi umsindisi wethu konke kungehluphe uma simuzwa simhlonipha lalelani akukho okunye okuthabisa Nkosi umlingela lelwe. Number 4, namhla singebone uthando lukhona nxa sibeka konke ngathini sichithwe izono asiphukwe taba uma simuzwa simhlonipha lalelani akukho okunye okuthabisi Nkosi omlinge. Here's the last one with power. Le ngakukholelwana nako kuthandana so hambe dleleni singezwa okuhle sikwenze simlalele naphi uma simuswa simhloniphe lalelani for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey.
Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you, dear Lord. Father, you have shown us that you love us before we even know you. Father, you are a God of love and the only God to be worshipped. We thank you for your mercy, that you've bring your only begotten Son to die for us. That, Father, we should be partakers of the heavenly joy. That one day when you come, we should be one of those who will be shouting in joy that you will receive us to you. In Jesus' name, amen.